Hello and welcome to Hidden Existence. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. I've got a great guest. He's more than a guest, actually. He's become a bit of a pal of mine. And it is, of course, Beast of Britain, Andy McGrath. Good evening, Andy.
Good evening, Daniela. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Well, a little bit, lockdown lunacy going on. I don't know if you're feeling the same as well.
I'm still in work and I'm avoiding public transport to get there. They've asked me to, and it's 6 miles away. So I'm walking 12 miles a day there and back to get there. So I'm actually feeling freer than normal, but better than usual.
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting out to work, but I feel like I'm not doing the things I usually do afterwards, which is to get down the beach or get out for a walk with the dog in the woods or something like that. They're the kind of things, because we're getting patrolled here by the police.
Yeah,
So
I've heard they've been a bit severe up north. Listen, to be honest with you, I didn't really care that it was the end of the world until I got to my favorite coffee shop and saw that they closed the whole chain. I was like, this sucks ass. This is awful. How could you do this? I don't care if I catch something. I need that coffee in the morning. Please be open,
oh no.
no matter how many die.
So how are you coping now? Are you just on the Nescafe at home?
I'm literally I have one at home, then I take the 6 mile walk to work, and then there's a coffee shop in Wimbledon Village where I work, and it's the only one that's open, and there's like a 40-minute queue for 10 people, 2 meters apart, all the way around the corner. And it's dreadful. My coffee sucks really bad. But it's halfway there. I'm not complaining, obviously.
No, no,
Much.
no, not much. Well, look, we're going to cover a few things tonight, and let's
Yeah.
start with Beasts of Britain. A few of the Beasts of
Mhm.
Britain, the ones that may be the more, I'm going to use the word plausible, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot in the book. I started writing it. Of course, it starts with lake monsters at the beginning, and everybody thinks we just have Nessie here, right? So when you look into the whole Loch Ness phenomena, well, there's a few lochs adjoining Loch Ness, Loch Lochy and Loch Or, Loch Garry in a roundabout sort of way. And they all have their own Nessie legends as well.
I've just put a picture up of Loch
Oh,
Ness, actually.
there
I've
you
never
go.
seen it from that.
Yeah,
It's huge, isn't it?
it's as the bodies of water here go. It really is huge. I think it's about 24 miles long. Estimates always seem to change. 750 feet deep, allegedly in
Wow.
parts. But it's only about a mile and a half across. So it's a narrow slip of water, but really, really deep, completely peat stained, and you can't see anything. If you're diving, you can't see your hand in front of your face. It's really dark. It's an impossible research area. It is a very popular tourist area as well. 250,000 to 300,000 tourists a year training their cameras on the loch in the hopes of seeing something. And you've got all the boat tours and everything else that surrounds that. But ironically, it's at night. There's not much light pollution. It's very dark, and even the little rivers that go off there. I walked up along the River Oich. Um, when I was there last time, I was at Fort Augustus. That was January 2019, I think. Following up on a fake Nessie photograph that some local writer had put in the paper. Got me up there looking for. But,
Oh,
yeah, but it's a beautiful area, but it's just surprising how pristine it still is. Considering they have so many tourists there. I think Fort Augustus, where I was staying, has a residential population of 500 people. It's the biggest village surrounding the loch. That's surprising, right? Then you go to all of the others, Loch Morar, and some of the ones nearby. Loch Morar has Morag, of course. Their monster there said to be very similar to Nessie. You go up that way, and there's nobody in those villages surrounding it. And half the loch isn't even accessible. That's over 1,000 feet deep and has like an 8 mile little river, River Mora, leading down to the sea. What a wonderful inlet for said beastie to come uh, thither. Yeah.
Does anything else come in from the sea into that loch?
Seals get in occasionally. There is a hydro dam, a small one, in the way, along the way. Seals get in occasionally. This beast was actually, there's a shallow shingle bank between the river and the loch, which is about a couple of feet deep, I guess, and about 20, 30 feet long. And in the 70s, the two brothers, Donald and I don't have the site in front of me, the Simpsons, they were driving past the loch and they actually saw the creature heave itself out of the river and move across the shingle bank and drop into the loch.
Wow.
And said it was this huge hulking creature with they saw the hindquarters, very powerful hindquarters, very dark brown kind of color, with what looked like a long thin tail or neck at the back that was wrapped around the creature and went straight into the other side. There was another fisherman who was there near Mowbray Bay who actually sighted the creature. The water is very clear at Loch Moral, by the way, and it was lying 20 foot long along the leaf strewn bottom of the loch, looking up at him with very slitty type of eyes, a lizard snake-like head, 4 flippers with 3 clawed toes on the end of them. Just this giant lizard looking up at him, and he made off to the shore very quickly in his fishing boat and got away from it. So there's things like that. I mean, Scotland, 31,460 lochs and lochans. It's amazing. No, it's just a wet. I know from recently being up there again. It's just a wet, watery place that's really underpopulated. So the book starts off with lake monsters, sea monsters, and the like, and normally the Nessie type that's seen in most places, and occasionally there's more of a sea serpent type, more elongate snake-like type, which have described in the Firth of Tay, which is on the east side of Scotland there. 20 foot, 30 foot long, caterpillar hump-like creature that's been seen on shore, sharp, pointy ears, seen shuffling along the shores of the Firth of Tay, was allegedly filmed in Tayport in 2015. And again, several humps are seen in the water, slowly descending one after the other, leaving a huge wake after it. It's interesting. I love the lake monster thing. That was my first love. But it's almost as bad for evidence as the Bigfoot phenomena. Really, there's lots of bits of film, but anything that has an aquatic environment, especially a deep, dark, unreachable aquatic environment as its abode, is pretty much protected by the elements, isn't it? That's a frustrating one. Yeah, and I think those are very plausible. They would have to be prehistoric survivors in my mind. I'm not in the mood to really accept things like giant slugs or what did somebody suggest? Giant mud skippers with a plesiosaur head and neck like lure on the top of its head. I don't know what it's luring in with that. But, salamanders and eels that are 40 feet long that can raise their necks out of the water just doesn't seem very plausible. Neither does the prehistoric survivor, but it's, to me, the least troubling out of all those possibilities.
We have like you say, we've little evidence of anything. And apart from, would you put big cats down as cryptids in the UK?
They're in the book because the book also has a section on out-of-place animals.
Okay, yeah.
Called Beasts from Abroad, and another section on foreign invaders, as it were, that have come to be part of the local makeup called Beasts in Our Backyard, like grey squirrels and the Canada goose and certain toads and frogs and scorpions and all different types of animals, wallabies, for example, which we have, a few populations around the country of wallabies that have escaped and done very well. So they're in the book. I think it's one of these genres where it sort of stretches into out of place animals. Big cats are the most plausible, of course. We know big cats exist for a start. It's just really
cats, big cats are real in the UK. They are.
Oh yeah,
I think
sure.
I had an experience with one, but we'll
You
talk about
mentioned about this. Well, no, I remember you telling me, but I think that was our first conversation.
that. Yeah, probably.
Growling behind the wall in some country lane as you were walking the dog, and the way you described it to me was such a warning growl from a large cat. It just seems. I mean, when you look at the Dangerous Wild Animals Act that was introduced in 1976, the stipulations, and I talk about this in my very cheesily named chapter in the book, Cats in the Cradle, and we talk about this, the stipulations in the Dangerous Wild Animals Act that said that they had to have an enclosure of a certain size with drainage and room to roam about, and you know, and so on and so forth. Expensive measures for people in countryside dwellings who, before that point, were walking them on leads through the local towns.
Yeah.
Leopards, uh, melanistic leopards like black panthers that were very popular pets at that time, and pumas would have been the most common and the most likely to survive in our environment as well. And what do we have? Millions of sheep, millions upon millions of rabbits and deer and all kinds of um, a thoroughfare that have no natural predators in the countryside. It's and I think this is another reason people don't get attacked by these big cats. It's because one, we're not their preferred food and the preferred prey, and another, why would they need to bother with us when there's rabbits aplenty and all kinds of things they can get very easily and stay away from people, which
Mm.
most wild animals want to do, don't they? I think they're countrywide throughout the entire country, and it's the most plausible thing. People who tell you about it, they're shocked, but the sightings are always the same,
Mm.
always the same kind of conditions.
Just saying it is from like the 70s when
Mm.
people say these look at him. How is it possible they can be breeding? I mean, what's the chances of two pumas meeting up, or can
Yeah,
they interbreed with different species, or would that
they
happen?
can.
Or
I mean, there are some sightings that seem to describe cats that are more rare, by the way, but they seem to describe cats that are not exactly anatomically correct, for their species. Some pointed ears on very large leopard-like cats are described from time to time. I think some people did admit, albeit via hearsay, to have released breeding pairs, male and female. Some zoos had lost them and just not reported in the past. There was a big cat breeder called Len. I wish I had this in front of me now. I'll find that. I'll find that later. Len something or other. Anyway, he was in the Malvern Hills and he had a big cat sanctuary up there. He bred big cats. And just before this thing came in, he later had told a friend who told a newspaper that he was releasing them into the wild for pet owners that wanted to get rid of them at that time, but didn't want to. They couldn't take them to the zoos. They didn't want to have them put down. They couldn't afford the housing, and they just let them go. And sometimes those were breeding pairs. There were more than one. These cats can have, can have a range of 20 miles or more. Um, I think sooner or later they would find each other, but for the most part, I think that breeding pairs have set up and established, they've had cubs, and then they've matured and moved out into new territory, and that's why they're moving throughout the country. So really, you wouldn't have to have lots of breeding pairs all over the country, just a few, and 40 years later or so, 44 years later, you can have quite a reasonable population. I'm not talking about hundreds, maybe 150, 200 cats tops, if that.
you're talking about there's Nessie and the cats, where we've got a bit of photography, something even. Other than that, we don't have anything on any of the other cryptids, or do we?
Well, nobody else does either, really. I mean, okay, there's the paddy footage and there's
I
various
mean,
other
in
things in
the
the
UK,
United
sorry,
States.
I'm talking
And
the UK.
yes, no, I mean, nobody else does in general worldwide. There are bits of footage here and there, but they're just as disputed. I remember seeing Jeff Meldrum give a talk with the original restored footage of the Paddy film, which is crystal clear. crystal clear. First generation footage, and they'd restored it and they'd enhanced it. And his point was, this footage where you can see muscles moving below the fur, where you can we've tested out that no human can move in this way. This footage is still highly disputed, highly disputed, and not accepted as evidence. So anything beneath this is no evidence at all. That's like the bar, and that's disputed. And yet, what do we have? In a country like ours, I think nobody's looking, and nobody really. What is it, like a handful of us guys here? Even with Loch Ness, there's nobody there anymore really looking. You've still got what's his name, Steve Feltham, on the shores of Doris, I think, on the shores of Doris, looking out with his telescope now and again, in his little van, selling his trinkets, doing some documentaries, and a few other people going around the lot, but nobody's diving in there with subs. We had Neil Gemmell, sure, do his eDNA thing, but it seems so patchy. I mean, what are they going to sample 23, 24 different locations? Are they deep samples? Are they from the bottom of the? No, they're just taking glasses of water out of the loch essentially, and hoping something's passed through there in that time. I know it was a great study. I know they found a lot, but it wasn't really, to me, just like that sonar scan they did years and years before. It wasn't really an effective way to find out if Nessie was there, and he kind of admitted that Nessie was the gimmick to give this new technique, this eDNA technique, the attention it deserved worldwide, and it's a great technique. It does deserve attention. Similarly, with the Operation Deep Scan that happened in the 80s, I knew somebody who was involved in that, and he said there were so many boats in such close proximity to each other, they all had to lower their sonar down really low so it didn't interfere with the next one. So it
Right.
almost created a bit of a sonar whiteout of the area. So it was a gimmick, but just by the proximity, just by the factor of having all those boats together to sweep the loch, affected all of their sonar abilities. And then they couldn't go to the sides anyway because it was too dangerous that people would crash and all the little bays. You have to think to yourself, what did they achieve? I don't think we really have had any, apart from the Robert Ryan's investigations, and all that MIT team that were there, the applied science team. I don't think we've had any effective investigations of that area at all, that have had money and facilities behind them since the 1950s and 60s.
Is there a lot of boat traffic on Loch Ness?
No, it's there is traffic there, but it's mainly tourist traffic. The season I think there are fisheries. I think there's salmon fisheries throughout. I think they have salmon throughout the year. So there's various fisheries and there's various local traffic too, but it's not very, very busy. It's not like going to Lake Windermere and everybody's pleasure boating for the
No,
day.
I'm just wondering if the lack of people and traffic and noise is going to create these creatures maybe or whatever's out there to come more out into the open.
At the moment, you mean?
Yeah.
I wonder that might be a possibly. It seems to be an effect that's happening with wildlife all around at the moment, right?
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know. The conditions in which it's normally seen in are very calm, very flat, calm water. I don't know if that's because it likes those conditions or that's just when you can get a glimpse of the animal. If you look at the loch when you go there, there's all these different currents beneath it and these crosswinds that hit it because it's this narrow, it's very hilly on either side. There's this narrow little body of water, and it's very hard to really establish what you're looking at all. Even if you look from a very high vantage point, which I did, once one of the tourist boats have gone past, I mean, the bow waves, they stay for about 2-3 minutes. You can't see the boat anymore, and yet these big curving waves are still going up to the shore. I think it'd be very hard to spot anything on a day that's not flat calm. But when it
Yeah.
is, and I've been there when it's flat calm, you really can see for miles. And it's beautiful. Who knows? I think there's just too much vested interest financially in Nessie and Loch Ness for there to be any honesty involved in the situation. And if you go up there and you dedicate your life to trying to find it, you'll soon find that you are dependent on that sensationalism to make your living and survive. So I think it's a difficult situation.
Interesting. Let's talk about Bigfoot then, because shall we? In the UK, it's a funny one, isn't it? It's well, you've got Chris Turner's putting a documentary out, a film soon called Sticks and Stones, and you're in it. And I think Captain Daz is in the chat tonight.
Captain Daz is there. Yeah, he's there.
He's there. What's Sticks and Stones about?
Well, I wrote this.
Obvious, but...
I wrote this chapter in my book, Sticks and Stones, and it was essentially out of frustration originally, but then out of intrigue and interest. Why, when you go to all of these British Bigfoot groups and Bigfoot groups around the world, do we see endless pictures of stick structures and teepees and little glyphs and stone rock stacking and all these different things? Why do we see this and have it painted as proof for Bigfoot habituation all the time? And when people are painting this as proof, why aren't they actually checking in the ground around where the sticks have been assembled or the teepees have been assembled to see if there's any deep indentations there or footprints or hair samples? It never seems to occur to them, right? So this is like a feeder pill. Every time you go out into the woods, you'll find a bunch of sticks and go, oh, look at that pinned arch. Oh, look, that's an X. Oh, that's these sticks have been leant against this tree. They're all leading in a certain direction, and it must be that the forest people, they're leaving them there for us to find, or they're leaving them there for each other to find, and to indicate which direction they went into. And I found some of these things in the past, and things that look like glyphs, and different sort of shapes. But then I thought, well, a lot of other people use the forest. Bushcrafters, for one, make teepees in the forest all the time, and the forestry workers have to go and stack sticks, and kids go in and mess around and put them in places. And also, trees fall into all kinds of funny X's and other shapes. They grow weirdly. I just couldn't get past it. Why aren't people looking for other evidence around these structures if they're so convinced that they are made by Bigfoot or Bigfoots? And I thought, let's do your own investigation. Let's look into it. And where better to go than Scotland to look for a creature that could hide out somewhere? And what better place in Scotland to go than Galloway Forest Park? 400 square miles of wilderness and forest, and nobody around practically. So we went there, and we chatted it out. We discussed all the different aspects. We looked for stick signs everywhere. We didn't find any. And what's interesting about these woods is that they were very, very mossy. The moss was about a foot thick and really wet. They're full of ticks, these woods, and they're just uncomfortable. Now, there were trees everywhere. Many trees had fallen as well because of the high winds up there. But we didn't see one single example of a stick lean or a teepee. And I had possible Bigfoot sightings reported to me in that area. I say possible, in exclamation marks, in parenthesis, exclamation marks, idiot. And I thought, okay, let's check it out. But there was nothing at all. And that was the one place I expected to find them. But the key factor that was missing from this place was people. People aren't camping in those woods. People aren't bushcrafting in them. People aren't walking there a lot because of the ticks and the uncomfortable, soggy shoes. And it just came to me, not in a flash, but it confirmed to me. It's because all at the times when we see in our local forests or nearby forests, an hour, 2 hours away in the countryside, when we see all of these stick signs, it's because people are making them, doing it. And it's really idiotic and embarrassing to us to attribute these things to Bigfoot without any other evidence at all, without the evidence of the creature to begin with. Anyway, rant over. But that's what the documentary is about. And Chris is there to kind of balance my cynicism, which he does really well in his great way. He always does. And Captain Daz is there, like me, as a true believer who just really wants to find the evidence and balances the both of us as the only sane guy in the group. And yeah, it's fun. It was a good time. But it might be, we might be excommunicated after it comes out.
Well, they're just opinions, aren't they?
They are.
Nobody should be getting upset about it.
That's right.
I agree with what you're saying. I don't think we actually venture too far into the woods, do we? We kind of go off the trail a little bit, even if we do. But, how far, one, the ground isn't that easy to walk over in some, especially where I'm up here, there's a lot of limestone and stuff like that. And it's not easy to get through it. And so you don't know what's really out there deep in the, but like you say, you were in a place where there were no people and there's no, me and Daz went to, someone had rung their British Bigfoot reports, research, Deborah Hartswell, and they said they'd seen a tree, a big tree that seemed to be stuck between two trees up near. They were driving up to the lake and they were driving past Lancaster University. And I'm from here, from Lancaster, and Deb's rung and said, do you want to go and have a look and see if you can see what this tree is? Me and Daz went up, and the university is literally on the side of the motorway with a big steep embankment going down to the motorway. And we went down there and we found the tree, and I'm pretty sure it was just wind damage. You could see it had been there for quite a while and it was rotten. And we walked down the embankment. It's quite steep and there's definitely no people there. I mean, obviously the university is just there at the top of the hill, but we found like pinned arches, we found glyphs, we found A signs. I mean, it was like a treasure trove of them. We couldn't believe how much we were seeing. But is that just nature? Because this is all on a small scale. When if anyone from America listening to us, we're not talking Colorado Bigfoot, huge tree structures. We're talking stuff that's no taller than us, aren't we? No. Things that are like 5 foot, 6 foot, for something put together.
Is it kids? I mean, is it also the rumors are, and I don't have this as an established fact, but the rumors are that our Irish traveller community often uses stick signs in the woods, small pinned arches, and other things to tell each other information about the area. This way to water, that way to the road, etc. And if people who are often in our countryside and often using the natural environment to give each other signals could be making sounds like this, as well as bushcrafters and kids messing around. Now, I'm not excluding it, and I pointed this out to Chris in the interview we do during the documentary, but it's just not enough by itself. So if we were finding footprints and other things and scat and hair, and then the sticks are the stick signs are multiplying in conjunction with that, that's leading to something. But if we're just taking the sticks as evidence, it makes us really vulnerable. So I made a joke in the presentation, which is when it comes, we can't see the trees for the woods when it comes to sticks, because if you go looking, what was it? It was something. If you go looking for I can't even remember. It was just so silly. Anyway, it was embarrassing. The whole thing. It was very embarrassing. I have to tell you that. I have to find the line. Okay. And happily as it stands, if one finds sticks in the woods, that is only evidence of trees. Right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's snarky. It's a little bit snarky, and it's meant to be humorous. Actually, it's meant to be humorous. Although
Actually, it's just fact.
it's just fact. If you,
Um,
yeah, just
we're,
evidence of trees.
yeah, it's like having the perfect kind of picture and someone picking apart the pieces, because we seem to have this idea of what Bigfoot is, what it does, just information we're carrying around with us that isn't, with no sort of proof or truth to it, but that everybody carries with them, and passes it down through the generations of the community. And
Yeah,
we're just associating this stuff with just no real evidence to it. And
yeah,
it does feel a little bit, kind of stripping away, because you kind of, popping the balloons of
mm,
what we think this thing is and what it does. But you know really, what do we know about this thing apart from it eats, it walks, it, very basic.
yeah.
basic
And
stuff.
even so, even those facts, they're not accepted amongst many people, because then there's the woo aspect of things, where it's paranormal, where it's perhaps associated with aliens or UFOs in some way, or it's portal jumping, it's using telepathy to speak to people. The one thing that strikes me as a religious person, studied religion for my degree, is that and now I'm married this last 10 years to somebody who has a different religion to me, is how people's philosophical or religious ideology affects what they see and what they perceive they've seen. So you almost like project what your religious or philosophical ideology is onto the stuff you experience. So in a way, as somebody who wants things to be woo, well, there's a lot you can attribute to that. Even if you saw something in the woods that was real and it disappeared, you can almost attribute that to it disappeared into thin air. It must have evaporated into a portal. Other than thinking, well, wild animals that are used to the forest can disappear from sight easily. I saw a deer on the edge of a little thicket in Weybridge, which is it's a town, uh, going back about a year, and I walked in to get close to it, and it disappeared from my sight within 2 seconds, and I had a clear view of the path, and I just couldn't find it. It's a deer. It's a very easy animal to pick out of the forest, but once it stepped in, I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it anymore. And I just thought, great. So that's a good example to me of, that animals are adapted to the environment, good at utilizing it to hide themselves. They don't want to be seen by us. Any animal don't want to be around us. We're bad news. They know it, which is why they're always hiding away. Even the predators mostly will avoid people if they can, if they don't need to eat us. They'll
Well, this
stay out
is
of the
what
way.
puzzles me about the encounter that I had. Why did this thing even need to growl? I was moving away from it. I wasn't in the field. I was on the road.
Maybe it
What?
had cubs. You had your dog.
Possibly, yeah.
Maybe the dog was the threat. The two there's uh, there's two encounters. The first two big cat encounters that were given to me were given to me, one by the sister of an ex-girlfriend who was a girlfriend at the time in the 90s, and she had been riding over the Preseli Mountains from a friend's farm, and she'd look back when she got to the top of the mountain, down into the valley where the farm was, and saw a black panther chasing sheep around in the field. And the second was a friend who lived in Devon, an old flatmate. And he had been walking his dog back uh, from their regular walk, and they lived out in the countryside, when he thought he saw a big black, it looked like a big black panther or a big black dog, he thought originally, coming towards his dog down the hillside. And it was a panther stalking the dog. And they ran inside the house, it chased them. And there are a lot of other sightings which are related to possible predation, or like many cats, I guess, seeing a smaller prey item moving away from it, they've gone into predator mode. They've become intrigued by that, or defensive. It's another animal in its territory. I would much more fancy it was the dog and not you that got the growl.
Yeah.
But
Well,
just
the weird thing is, they never picked up on it at all. The dogs
really,
didn't pick up on it. They were walking in. They were trotting along in front of me, and hang on a sec. I've got to really back off. And they just didn't even notice. I couldn't believe it. I was, waiting for the ears to go up because they're idiots. They would have got over like what they're only tiny, but they think they're like Alsatians, and they would have reacted. So that's just the weird thing about that.
Okay.
But I definitely
think it's like when you see somebody really mean in the street and you're afraid, so you pretend not to notice them.
Yeah, I mean, I've never thought of that. I've never thought of.
They're like, just pretend like you haven't seen it. Maybe it'll go away.
Yeah. Oh no, never. No, that's a good point, though. Yeah. I don't know if they're that clever, but they could be. So, going back to what we're saying, why do we hold on to these beliefs? Why don't we think? Hang on, stop. Why am I believing this? What evidence have I got? What research is there into this? Why are we so happy just to go along with?
Because it's encouraging. It's a feed pill. If you really love Bigfoot and you're really into the sightings, and let's remember the sightings are very compelling. There's a lot of people who've really risked themselves coming forward to give these sightings. So they've had some experience, that's for sure. So you're really into the whole thing. And every time you go into the woods, you see evidence of it because you see all these sticks around in funny positions, and the tree that fell into the X and a pinned arch and a glyph and a TP and a few sticklings or broken branch. Branches break all the time. You might not see any evidence around for it, but it doesn't matter. A tree can fall and hit it and bounce off somewhere else. That's it. It's a feeder pill. You get a hit every time you go in. Bigfoot is here. And not in any bad way at all, but I think I've only really received firsthand a small collection of first-hand Bigfoot sightings the whole time I've been doing this in Britain. And yet I've received over 100 stick posts and emails. And I always say to the person, okay, fantastic. Keep an eye on it. Note any changes in the area. Regularly visit it. You could leave some food out, but other animals might take that. If you can get hold of a trail cam, or you can get a friend to go with you, stay overnight, see what happens. Nobody ever does.
You wouldn't want to, would you, in the UK?
No.
It's a lot of work, isn't
with
there?
a friend, never go alone. Go with somebody.
Yeah. I just think there's a lot of work that's going to have to go into finding this.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe it exists. I don't know, obviously, but I work with Kerry on the researchers we want Bigfoot Odyssey. I've heard so many encounters. It's very likely it does exist. But the thing is, we how on earth are we going to get this evidence? Do we need to get this evidence? Even, I mean, this is another thing, isn't it? Where the subject goes.
I'm half and half at the moment because I sort of really blew out my own pocket and head last year searching for evidence. And I just thought, you're really leaving yourself very vulnerable here, because essentially all the other things don't have tangible evidence either. There's the track casts in the US and some other places which are very convincing, some great casts. But then there are so many of them that there's obviously clearly a lot that are just fabricated. You set up a group and then you've got to have your own set of casts to go with it, and you sell them at the conferences and things like that. Some of them are very tidy. Some. But then it's no less likely here than the US. Yes, they got more forests, they got more space, but the UK is only big. It's only small. Sorry, from a Google Earth point of view, it's big if you're on foot. There's so much habitat. There's so many places that nobody goes to, where there's food and water and all the rest of that stuff. So, we used to have bears. We used to have people say, how did they get there? We used to have bears. We used to have wolves. What about all the other animals we got here, land animals? How did they get here? Right? Stuff got here. There's the Dogland Land Bridge. You know about that. That we were once connected to continental Europe, to the Dogland Land Bridge. They only started finding this when they were this little area between I think it's southern England, and I've got the information here somewhere, and in Europe they started dredging up mammoth skulls and hunter tools and all different types of artifacts. So they've actually established that there was civilizations. So this is a place, I've got the article now. It was stretched between Britain and continental Europe. It was discovered in the 20th century when fishing trawlers began to drag up remains of deer, mammoth, lion, and prehistoric tools and weapons just east of the Wash. And they believe the Doggerlanders were hunter-gatherers who migrated with the seasons, fishing, hunting, and foraging for foods such as hazelnuts and berries. They believe it was submerged about 6,500 BC. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe that's how all of our sort of large land animals came across then, because there's no explanation for how even the bears are extinct here now and wolves are extinct. It's only since the 1100s or something like that for bears, and maybe the 1700s for wolves. I don't remember. And we had cave lions here and all these kinds of things, in prehistoric times. There was a land bridge. Stuff got here. So maybe stuff stayed here. Our heraldry of the Middle Ages is covered in wild men and wood woes, and some of them are very ape-like. Some of the carvings on the churches, especially, very ape-like. And there's not a cathedral that doesn't seem to have a wood woes carving in there somewhere. Now, I know that's really wrapped up with pagan folklore, which became church folklore as well. But it's the concept. It was there before we knew about apes. In many cases, it's significant that we should have created this creature out of our imagination, and then far, far later, in places like the US and Russia and other places, like the Himalayas, you've got these ape men wandering around that people keep experiencing, keep bumping into. The only problem we really have, and I promise I'll finish this rant in a second, is many of our sightings seem to be very, very recent, last 40 or 50 years. That could simply be because nobody's ever tried to collect them or speak about them. But it is relative, it's troubling.
Wouldn't we have found old bones of them if we're discovering old bones, dinosaurs and things like that?
Yeah.
I think at some point we'd find some skeleton or something of these things.
Well, there is a difference, though. So bones of dinosaurs are in sedimentary rock. That's where we find them. So they've been buried and concealed quickly to preserve those bones. Other animals that die, like deer or anything else that die in the forest, their carcasses and bones are dispensed of very quickly by the forest animals. So if they were not covered very quickly in sediment, then we wouldn't find them. But then you would think that perhaps some would be at some point. We have, after all, found all kinds of, ancient land mammals, like the giant elk and all these different things, the woolly rhinoceros and all these things that would have once been alive. We found these things. So, why can't we find Bigfoot? What's troubling about it is that there's a section, and it's the only time we'll talk about the Beast of North America project, but I'm not really revealing any details about it yet. But there's a section in there called Forever Finding Bigfoot. And it's essentially about a lot of people criticize the Finding Bigfoot program. And I know Cliff and Bobo, and they're lovely guys, but they criticize it from a modern point of view. So basically, it's like when you criticize the Beatles, you don't realize that nothing we have now would be available without them, right? without them being there and doing what they did, or the Stones or something, there would be no cryptozoology scene presently in its present format without the Finding Bigfoot guys, because they brought it back. And, essentially, there's a knock-on effect from that can affect people in all parts of the world that receive that program. It could have affected this so much that we've invented a phenomena in some way. People's mental processes and psychoses can have very strange, they can exhibit themselves in very strange ways. I know that I've been lied to very successfully by several individuals who I was convinced were telling me the truth. I've got an excellent nose for a lie, an excellent nose. I can almost feel it before you start lying. I know you're lying. And these guys convinced me, and I realize it's because they convinced themselves.
Right.
They had a psychosis. It wasn't that they were lying to me. It's just they didn't know it wasn't the truth. And that's, what we're looking at sometimes. But, all of that set aside, you have to wonder, has this affected people? When you look back on the books written by Bernard Hoovermans, which are lauded in cryptozoology, and Ivan T. Sanderson, and even Lauren and other people like that, the things that conclusions they came to, they may not have meant to be word or, seen as fact or indisputable belief. And yet we build upon that foundation, and 50, 60 years later, we don't even question where the information came from. It's just a fact that we build upon. And I think this is the situation, whereas you can't unravel it. You can only go out and try to find your own facts, and try as much as possible to not be influenced by, by the paradigms or whatever you already accepted.
Yeah, which is hard enough itself, isn't it? To
Yeah.
you seem to jump out of one paradigm into another, not realise it, can't you?
And Daniela, are you creating paradigms now for other people that they'll refer to? If your show's really successful, they'll refer to in several years. People have already contacted me about certain elements in the book and said, yes, because what you wrote here, and I, that's led me to believe this, and I had this experience afterwards which confirmed it. I remember thinking, I actually changed my mind about that since I wrote the book. I was wrong. Because you're wrong. We're wrong. We're just individuals throwing out ideas that might not be true. You just have to investigate it and see if it works out. And often you're just really wrong.
I'm just going to go back up here to a comment.
Yeah.
There's no landmass in the UK. It's in 2 bits to be able to hide. Do you not think they could live underground? Cave system?
They could, but let me get my landmass up. Oh, poor commenter. I'm going to have to bore the life out of Daniela and blow you out the water now with these stats. Oh, goodness.
No, not the stats. No.
I apologize ahead of time for these stats, but I'm going to make them really, really quick, and I won't go off point. I promise.
It's fine.
Okay, so where is it?
I'm just going to say happy birthday to Belle Prepper for yesterday. She was in the chat yesterday, and I didn't have time to say.
Oh, happy birthday to you!
Yeah,
happy birthday. Okay, so
Paul Sinclair has got some great stuff. He's got a lot of. He's putting a lot of stuff out at the moment. Paul Sinclair, I'd like to get him
awesome. I love Paul. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a very nice chap too. Okay, so I'm going to reference the 2012 National Ecosystem Assessment that was undertaken by, I think it was DEFRA, one of those guys. There's a link on my blog. I'll give you the blog address afterwards if anybody wants to search for it. They were surprised to discover that only 6.8% of the UK's land area could be classified as urban. That's a figure that included rural development and roads. So when they broke these figures down amongst the 4 primary nations that make up the UK, they found that 10.6% of England, 1.9% of Scotland, 3.6% of Northern Ireland, 4.1% of Wales was urban sprawl, which left a huge 93% of the UK that wasn't urban. Then they found 54% of the land in the towns and cities was also green space. So,
There's a lot, isn't there? There's a
yeah,
lot.
so I mean, if 93% of the entire country is urban, if 1.9% of Scotland is urban sprawl, including roads and railways, yes, there's space. You know, if you go out there like you do, Daniel, and like I do, you see there's space everywhere. Britain, it's got cities and little towns interspersed throughout lots of countryside, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at a map now. I don't know whether to just share it with people. You know, anyone in America who
Yeah.
who's watching this, and
What did we say earlier? Yes, it's smaller country than some others, but it's not small if you're on foot. It's only small on Google Maps.
if you see, you know, we have these kind of scattered towns, don't we?
Yeah.
I'm going to put the full thing up.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
we've got so much
So
in
this is your
between.
part of the country, yeah.
Yeah, this is me around
Yeah.
here.
And go up to Scotland. Because
Yeah,
Scotland,
I mean, look
is
at that.
empty.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's a couple of key roads.
tiny
That's
little
it. Wales is the same. Wales
that's
is the same.
there's not even anybody living in these places, the coal
No,
places. But it's remote up there, and
so
same
remote.
with, I mean, a bit of Wales, but not as much, I think, as you know, go to the north of Scotland.
Oh no, we're a small country anyway. But yeah, Wales
But
is
we,
the same.
you know, just look how this is the thing, you see. Look how tiny
Yeah,
we are compared to America,
I
and
know.
and there's so many sightings in America, and we're not seeing a lot, or we're not. You know,
No,
I'm going to say, I don't think we're seeing any. The
I mean, I'm not saying it is here. I'm not saying for a fact it is. And when people see the documentary with Chris, they'll see that I my skepticism is extreme at this point. But I've really taken the time to look into it. So on the one hand, you know, while I was really going for it, I was getting a lot of criticism from the anti-British Bigfoot people, and when I'm being taking a cynical approach to it, I'm getting tons of criticism from the pro-British Bigfoot people. I'm just saying, I love the idea. I definitely honor the witness testimony, like 100% all the way through. I'll take you at your word if you tell me something. If I don't believe it, I just won't use it. But you'd never know, because I just wouldn't say to you, I think there's an issue with this. And sometimes it can just simply be the fact that I just can't make the numbers work, you know, with what you've told me. But yeah, honor the witness sightings. There's 500 plus, 525. Deb is the main compiler of that stuff. She's dedicated, you know, 4 decades to that, hasn't she? And she's got that great map. And it, you know, everybody should look at it, because there's a lot on there that can be very, very helpful to get a picture of this. Some first hand, some second hand, some, you know, newspaper reports and things. And she's a witness too. I met other witnesses, and I believe them, and the people I've spoken to I believe. But it's not really my, whether you're telling the truth or not. It's not really up to me to say I believe you or I don't believe you. It's not my job. My job is to find out if it could possibly be real, if it could possibly be true. So it's an unemotional. It should be an unemotional pursuit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Andy Gone Fishing saying, what if the government caught and relocated Squatches to the UK 50 years ago?
Why would they do that?
Yeah. Why would they do that, Andy, do you think?
Just to mess with us, right?
Just
The British government, they can't even get this big cat thing sorted out. The way they do things is, and for any Americans listening, it's not even plausible denial. It's just no comment. Just don't even say no comment. Just don't respond. With the big cat thing, they'll leave the fringe to talk about it, and that essentially invalidates the subject, and you don't have to deal with it anymore. I don't see any possible reason why they would relocate Sasquatches here, and why would they catch them? I think it's the same in the US, by the way. I don't think people are relocating them and hiding them to save the login industry. I just think they can't find them. I just don't think you're finding a creature like that if it doesn't want to be found. Not about logging, because if you found them, nobody's believing it anyway. It's not going to affect any logging. It's got to be plausible. Yes, there are conspiracies, but they're normally to achieve something, not just for the sake of messing with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is such a mystery. Hi, Brandon. UK Bigfoot stories are evidence. How do you explain the tree structures that are almost identical to those around the world? Well, what are you talking about here? Big structures or these little ones? Because I mean, to me, the bit of bushcraft stuff going on,
Yeah.
they they don't look very intricate. Some people are finding Rob's in. I think Rob's in from Memory Bubble. He found something that was entwined. That's deliberately put together that looked maybe too difficult for a person to do.
I'd say two things. One, there are people all around the world. But then two, I'm not saying that they're not Bigfoot structures. They just can't be evidenced by themselves.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Hang on a second. Bummer. PF. Any little people reports?
Yeah, I love these. Not many. I mean, if you think of the old fairy legends here of old, there's so many in Europe as well. And I had an idea after hearing stories of the Janjadi in Australia. There's this miniature Bigfoot-like creature, or do they call the American one the Bookwis or something else? I got that wrong. I know I have. But yeah, the Janjadi especially, sort of like a little Bigfoot, but a carnivore. And thought, what if these old Grugachs and Fenugrees and all these old troll-like fairy creatures in England could have been based upon sightings of sort of little hairy hominids. Maybe we can find something on that. I did find a few stories, and it does feature in the book, but I mean, yeah, just few and far between, really. There's, I could give you one, I guess. One of my favorite ones. I'm just opening the blog.
You
here
have a
just so
look
I
for
can
that. By the way,
reference it.
everybody, you can get Andy's book, which I have here. I'll put a link in the description.
Oh, you got it.
I have it, yeah. It wasn't, you didn't sign it though. I was a bit disappointed. Never got your autograph.
Oh, did I send it to
Yeah.
you or did you buy it?
I think I bought it actually.
Oh, bless you. Okay, sorry
Yeah.
about that.
And I think I got a t-shirt as well.
You got a t-shirt?
Yeah, got a t-shirt.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Proper fan.
That's just me and you now, the own one. uh, uh,
What a t-shirt
um,
next.
yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna give you. I'll give you two stories, and these are because it falls in line with the theory they had. So the first one is the Trolls of Slitting Mill. This is quite a famous one, actually. So in 1975, you got a young couple, Barry and Elaine, returning from a Christmas party in the early morning with their children asleep in the car. They're driving towards their home in Slitting Mill, Staffordshire. The car stalls, and Barry jumps out to check the engine. Now his wife screams, and she sees a small figure run across the road in front of them. And she said another one followed, then another one. I followed the first one, and she described them as being hairy, like troll creatures, um, quite short, hunchbacks, and big hook noses, not wearing any clothes at all, just hair all over them, about 4 feet tall. And when the third one crossed by, she could see them all at the edge of the trees, being wary of them or the car. Apparently, this couple were missing time after the creatures disappeared. So that's a bit of a weird, spooky one. Another one was given to me. I think Deborah shared this one actually from one of her witnesses. New Year's Day, January 2018. Dog walkers in Errington Woods, and she saw something she described as Littlefoot. So she was walking in Errington Woods near the village of New Mask on New Year's Day when she heard chattering noises, sounded like two men muttering, and sounded a bit ape-like. She looked into the trees in the direction of the sounds, saw two creatures, stood next to a felled tree about 3 feet tall and covered in tawny coloured hair. Both males. She saw the anatomy on one of them. They looked like small, primitive humans. One was wearing what she assumed to be a loincloth. Had a mane of hair down their necks. They were very muscular. She got the impression they were fully grown. And they just looked at her. The dog started barking, and they ran off into the bushes. So yeah, those are two of a handful of sightings, just a handful. It was a bit of a stretch. It was a theory I had. I've never really been able to get enough to satisfy that it could actually be a thing here. Not like a junkyard in Australia.
When you say loincloth, I'm thinking, where do they get the material from? You know, I know
exactly.
Like, you know, caveman walking around with the Fred Flintstone, and you know, where are they getting the material from to dress like that?
Washing lines? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, but that's you're thinking like a normal person. Think of the plausibility. Where did they do that? You'd have to assume that if they would choose to wear a loincloth, then they could make one. But if they can make one, we're talking about really intelligent people almost, really.
Why don't they wear the full pants and the top? You know, why are they just sticking to...
Why don't they have like a Burberry hat on or something and some Nikes?
Definitely.
I don't know. I've started calling this, like, I was been into cryptozoology for so long, I've literally started calling it modern folklore. And that's not to diminish the sightings. So it's like folklore happening in real time. Because all the sightings in my book are mostly modern anyway, within the 40, 50 years. And it's a folklore happening in real time. I can't establish it. I can't prove it. And I've tried. And it was a bit egotistical to try to, really, because nobody else has been able to. So why should I, with my non-scientific background? But I can't prove it. So it's modern folklore, urban legend. And it's exciting. And if you look at it from that perspective, that the witness is king, the eyewitness is king, and you have to honor them. Obviously, you don't accept everything you're told, but you have to honor them. And if you can go out and do some scientific investigations and try to gather some evidence, then fantastic. The only thing I'm asking of people who send me sightings in the sense of sticks and stones and the rest of that stuff is, or a footprint, is, just do a bit of, just do a bit of investigation. Look around to see if you can see any foot imprints around the trees, or if you leave your fruit out and find some of it's eaten, look to see if there are teeth marks in it, imprints, and not just being pecked apart by a crow. If you find a footprint and you can't cast it, put something next to it so I can see what the size is, like your shoe or a tape measure or your watch or whatever you can, your phone, something we can measure and compare. That's all. But for the rest of it, just have fun with it. It's a fun subject. And maybe the likes of me and you were just a little too serious about gathering all the other bits of information that we need to establish it.
I'm a bit like, two minds about leaving food out, because I've heard it several times from people where they say, if it was like a little critter, it would leave like remains of the food. But who's to say another little critter hasn't come along and eaten the remains of the other little critter?
Sure.
Animals are clever. They can get to food, can't they, if they want to, little things and all sorts. I don't know. I don't see it as a very, a great way to capture evidence, gifting food. There's lots of things that it has to be difficult for them to get into it. If you can do it, put it in a container or
like a little twisty jar.
Yeah, or something like that.
One. Simple twisty jar. Yeah, of course, because you just leave the food out. Well, other animals live in the forest that like free food. So why wouldn't they eat it? Yeah.
Yeah. Couple of I'll just go back to Andy gone fishing. I've lost it now. Sorry, Andy. When he was talking about them relocating,
oh yeah,
because there's some talk at the moment, and I think there was some. Was it last year, the year before? I don't want to get into it, but MK Davis went on BDLP, and they're talking about there was some cover up with the party thing, and more Sasquatch were killed, and you know,
Okay, I can see that comment now.
I don't know about all that, Andy. You know, I've just heard so many different sides to it that I'm just. But yeah, it's possible. Anything is possible. We could have relocated him over here. Brandon again. And Andy, have you watched Tiger King on Netflix? Do you think those big cats are from illegally private owners?
I haven't watched Tiger King for one reason, and one, I've been very busy, and two, I'm allergic to mullets. Every time I see that mullet, I just can't switch it on. And that's one hell of a mullet that guy is wearing, right? But I do like the big cat side of it, and also it's not really about big cats. It's about a guy who kept them and became a killer for hire, right? Something like that. It's just those kinds of things stay with me. So no, I haven't seen them. Now there was the same laws that we have in Britain, by the way, don't apply in Ireland. I think until very recently, it was perfectly legal to keep these big cats throughout Ireland. People would be walking tigers down country lanes and keeping panthers in garages or in blocks of flats and things like that. So I think it's very possible that some of the cats he had were illegal. I don't really know. But from the American situation, one thing I will say that's very interesting about tigers over there is that, and I knew this before the program came out, is that actually I think America has the largest percentage of tigers in the world.
All right.
No, actually, they have I think something like 8,000 in captivity or something crazy like this, but they actually are sustaining the world's tiger population. In other areas of the world, they're rare. Some places they're very rare indeed. And this penchant for keeping tigers in the US has actually kept the species alive, for better or worse. But I think that's a good thing.
Andy, other than third-party reports that came to you, is there any evidence of large primates in the UK?
Now, I've had third-party reports. Second party, I've had first-party reports too, by the way, several. And one I mentioned a lot from an actual primate keeper who worked in a very well-known zoo here, so he knew his stuff. But there's no evidence. I mean, we don't even have the tracks that people talk about. We don't have any photos that even pertain to be of a British Bigfoot. I know some people have photographed tracks, by the way, barefoot tracks, but they always tend to be of a tapered foot, like a human foot in mud, which in many cases I've interpreted to be those what are those running shoes called, Daniela? That sort of
The like they fit like a
glove for
like
your
a foot.
feet.
Nike were doing them. I think a lot of them are doing them. I don't know what they actually call.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them seem to be.
Running gloves, something like that.
I don't know. There's a special name for them, but a lot of them seem to be things like that, or just people walking barefoot. Some people do. I used to know a lot of hippie friends that used to walk all over the place barefoot. So yeah, I haven't seen anything whatsoever that would establish that there is something like that living in the UK. I think the ancient woodwoes art on the noble heraldry of the country from the Middle Ages and on the church carvings and on the tapestries would be great evidence that at least they were basing these drawings upon something that had been seen at some point. There are one or two with conical heads even, which is way before we even knew about gorillas or anything like that. So that could be something perhaps, but who knows? I don't know.
Susan, just looking, what's your thoughts on werewolf reports in the UK?
Had quite a few of those. It's just such an odd thing. Daniel, probably, I wonder if you feel the same, that there is at least some sort of evidence, scant evidence in the fossil record of a giant ape of some kind existing around the world, not here, but in other places, like Gigantopithecus and things like that. But we don't have anything that would indicate that there was a bipedal wolf-like creature at some point in existence anyway. But werewolf legends are they're prolific throughout all of European history and culture. Could this be some sort of pagan throwback? Is it to do with some sort of ritualistic practice? I don't know. There certainly seem to be some ritualistic undertones to some of the sightings. However, in many cases, they just appear to be animals, like the werewolf of Hull, Old Stinker, that was seen several times by people in 2016 in the winter there. One time, I think, with a half-eaten dog in its mouth, leapt, over a drainage channel and 8 feet over a fence. It was had incredible athletic abilities. It's hard to say. There's one here in London, the Werewolf of Camberwell, which was reported to Linda Godfrey, and I investigated that. Camberwell Old Cemetery. It's got a sort of 10 acres of forest in the middle of it, growing out of the gravestones. It's really spooky.
Wow.
I went there, and Camberwell's not a great place, particularly anyway, but I went there in the daytime and looked around, and it was just really, really grim. And this guy, 96, I believe, he was cutting through this little section in the graveyard, cut through a little forest section. And if you go to my page, you'll see pictures of it. And at night, he was pinned to the ground by some big, slobbering, bipedal wolf-like creature with a head like an Alsatian, sniffed him up and down, and within seconds, ran off and left him there. And he believed he was spared because he has a disease that dogs can smell.
Right.
Really weird detail for him to put in there, but from those details, it kind of piques my interest for validity of the sighting. Like a mundane detail. When I published or republished that sighting in the book, and when I visited the location, somebody who'd lived there in Camberwell, an Irish lady, a few years ago, said to me her and a friend were walking past the graveyard. I think this is in 2011 or 2012, when they suddenly heard a growling noise, and one of the trees was being violently shaken within the graveyard. Quite a thick tree. She didn't believe a human could do it, and they both ran off, terrified. And they never knew anything about this sighting. She just kind of got in touch when she heard about the first one. So yeah, I don't know what I think about them. I find it implausible, but then so many things are. Who am I to say that it's not a living creature?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I always think, listening to people, their encounters is much, much more than having a photo or a video or evidence. It is how, but like you say, you can be fooled.
Yeah, but that's going to be really,
Yeah,
really great. Yeah, that's it.
pull it off anyway.
Yeah.
Have we got another couple of questions before we call it a night? I'll have a quick look through. The common, I think you might have come in a bit late, Philip, but
I see that.
are we going to answer that or not?
Yeah. No, I think the most common cryptid in the UK the cryptids are lake monsters, because, and again, sorry to keep referencing the book, you'll see lots of sea serpent and lake monster sightings in the book at the beginning, especially, and then the index at the back. After that, I would say it was big cats, even though they're out of place animals and not cryptids per se. Definitely big cats, in the thousands of sightings, at least hundreds every year, but in the thousands of sightings total. But lake monsters, yeah, tons and tons. There's a great book called Lake Monsters and Sea Serpents of the British Isles by Paul Harrison. It was written in 2001, so it only goes up until then, but it's a great compendium of sightings new and old around the entirety of the UK and all the coastal waters. And he doesn't believe in them. He believes there's some sort of giant eel, but he delivers the sighting in the in the original format, and the descriptions are very, very compelling. So that's a great book to look at if you're looking for that kind of thing.
Sharon R. Andy, with all the research I've done, I do know that the government know of them and catch them and tag them. Can you elaborate, Sharon? If you know, let us know.
Yeah.
Because that's just like a little teaser, isn't it?
It's a teaser. I mean, without being insulting Sharon in any way whatsoever, we can all say things that we know, and as friends, we all take each other at our word, but we do need something to back that up, and it has to be a bit more than hearsay. I'm not unused to military hearsay from insiders and things like that, and oftentimes I think there's this information. I think there's so much sensationalism in the Bigfoot community worldwide, and the reason for it is because there's very little to keep us entertained going on. There's very little evidence, so we need intrigue again. And I think people just come up with stuff. They come and they tell you, look, I spoke to a guy and he was in the military and he was involved in an operation, like the Kandahar giant story. You remember that story? The big redhead giant spears all of the Iraqi soldiers.
Yes.
And it's clearly made up, but it's legend now because the internet. You have a hard time disputing that. If you know, then we need to know how you know, and the validity of that source. And unfortunately, not to say it's not possible, but I do not know any possible reason that a government would spend all of that time tracking and tagging an animal only to hide it from everybody. I think a lot of people, if they really, really found it, would be like, hey, especially with the from an evolutionary paradigm, for example, that would be a missing link to many people. Why not? If that's the prevailing paradigm, why not say we've got it and here it is? Maybe they're just not interested.
It's quite possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sharon again, it's a living, breathing flesh and blood wolfman to me.
Okay.
Yes, I do. The man who came here to tell me, he was a military man, but he was sworn not to tell, but he obviously told.
Yeah, and that's the other thing as well, Sharon. They all swore not to tell, but they tell one person. What you have to ask yourself is this, and with all the greatest respect, is why did he tell you? And for what purpose? Was it just to confide in somebody? Because I've had a lot of these sort of military insider facts. I can't tell anybody, but I can just tell you. And I say, well, why do you want to tell me? What am I going to do about it? There has to be a reason for it. Sure, people share things to get them off their chest, but most of the time, if it's like, I can't tell you where I know it from, I can't tell you how I know, I can't tell you what I do in the military, I can't give you any evidence of that, but I'm just giving you this fact. Well, you've got to.
I know what you're saying, Sharon. Do not close your mind. We're not being closed-minded, but I think if you're going to share information, let's share it.
You got to back it up. You got to back it up, Shazza.
A snippet of something, because we're intelligent as well, and just to say that to someone, yourself, Sharon, someone just says that to you with nothing to back it up, you're going to be going, come on, I need a little bit more than that. But I respect that man's privacy. If you didn't want to,
that's fair enough. And we respect your opinion on that too, Sharon.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we do need a little more than that to go on, I'm afraid.
Yeah. And here again, Brandon, Andy, that story is BS. This is a Kandahar giant, I think he's talking about. He was deployed there and all the PMCs were full of it. Whatever it is, they were full of it.
Yeah. So he's agreeing with me on that one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, Andy, thanks very much for...
I had a great time. Had a great time. When I'm not stalking you and randomly calling you to just say stupid things on the phone.
That's why I said on the show, and I'll talk to you later, just to stop you having to ring me again to see what I'm doing. And like trying to wash up the pots and whatever I was doing at the time. But it was good to hear from you. You can ring in.
Look, I just want to say really quickly before I go, if I seem super skeptical. I'm not brushing aside anybody's opinion or anything, but this kind of skepticism, I turn it in on myself all the time with what I'm doing because it's necessary. I cannot come to you and claim to be investigating these things unless I really turn it on myself and say, okay, what are the details? How can we exclude this? Any part of it? How can I disprove any part of it and debunk it? And if it can pass that test reasonably, anyway, then I'll put it in. We all have to do that to ourselves. So no offense to anybody that I've said I don't think so too tonight.
Well, the last thing I put up, Jeff, my friend Jeff Townsend, the Giants of Canada had dead 13-foot body was flown to Wright Patterson AFB on a C-130J aircraft. Now,
Okay.
I'm Jeff. I'm going to ring you and we'll talk about this. I'm pretty sure Jeff can back that up if he's put that on there.
Great,
because I know Jeff. So thank you everyone that's come tonight in the chat. I think I've had a good night. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Daniela.
I have invited Chris on, so when I think he has had problems with his camera and laptop, but when he's back up and running, we'll get you back on with
Captain Daz.
With Captain Daz and Chris for the Sticks and Stones documentary.
That'd be awesome.
That's
that'd be awesome.
I think it's out. Is it out yet? Or it's just...
No, he's just finishing up a few bits. He's had a few documentaries to get through, Paul's and some others. So I think it's end of April, he said.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. So thanks everyone. I will see you tomorrow night on the researchers report over at Bigfoot Odyssey. And I might even be here on Hidden Existence on Sunday night. I need to just arrange something, but hopefully I'll be here. So once again, thanks, Andy. Thank you, everyone in the chat. Everyone have a good night and weekend, and catch up with you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.